think about the Constitution for just a moment. The program is about the Constitution, which is built upon the premises, or one of the premises, is that you have natural rights before God. Now, I want you to think about that. You have natural rights that are given to you, bestowed unto you by God Almighty. That's what makes the American Constitution different from any other country in the world, because the government does not dispense rights. No, those rights are given to you by God. You own them already because you're a creature created in God's image. And what are those rights? Well, you find them in what is called the Bill of Rights. The right to speak, for example, that would be, of course, number 1 amendment, the right to freedom of assembly and freedom of worship, all included in the First Amendment. That is not the government grants you the right, but it is that you have that right before God, and the government is therefore to protect it. So the same thing regarding the Second Amendment. Of course, you're familiar with the right to keep and bear arms. Now, I want us to think about, let's back up, let's just take a bird's eye view for just a moment of the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. And I want to talk about it, and I've mentioned it before. If you're a listener to the program, you know this is what it's about. And that is, there are 2 unique features to the Bill of Rights. Now, today, it's very, very difficult to have a discussion on the Bill of Rights at all, because so many people, including the Supreme Court, have made so many decisions that are outside the boundaries of the Bill of Rights, and the legislative branch has done so also, way outside the boundaries of the Bill of Rights and the concepts and the premises upon which the Bill of Rights is built. That we are unfamiliar with what the original intent and the idea that is behind, and the genius that is behind the Bill of Rights. And so the 2 unique features. Number 1, the first feature of the Bill of Rights is the amazing fact that it is not a declaration of rights at all. Absolutely not. The first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, is not a declaration of rights at all. Now, people are going to say, what are you talking about? It is a declaration of prohibitions. Prohibitions. Thou shalt not touch. Thou shalt not touch. You shall not legislate on this topic either. That's what it's about. It's not declaring that here I have a right to do this and a right to do that, and I declare that I have the right to do this. No, that's not it. No, the founders understood perfectly well, and we'll talk about this more regarding natural law given us by God. You have a right before God not only to speak, to worship, to assemble, to redress the grievances that you have with government. You have a right to do that, peaceably, of course. You have a right to do that. That's not something the government grants you to do. That's number 1. You have a right for self-determination. What does that mean? I have a right to protect myself, my family, my community. Can I protect my country as well? Yes. You know, something that just scalds me every time Uncle Joe Biden talks. He says, you know, the deer are not running through the forest with Kevlar vest. Well, you know something, Uncle Joe? The first 10 amendments, and the Second Amendment particularly, was not given so that we might deer hunt. It was actually worded that we might have self-determination against an over-aggressive government. That's the reason we have it. So the founders understood we have this right before God already. And what they're saying is, federal government, you shall not touch it. So it's not a declaration of rights at all. It is simply, in the minds of the founders, it was simply a listing of the prohibitions against the government. That's why the wording of the Bill of Rights is this way. Congress shall make no law. Remember reading the Bill of Rights? Would that John Cornyn in the state of Texas would do so. Congress shall make no law. Who is that talking to? The Congress of the United States. You shall not make no law regarding the protection of your Second Amendment rights. That is the right to keep and bear arms. Now, the second feature of the Bill of Rights is this. The founders did not want the federal government to be the watchdog over the state's responsibility to protect the rights of people. It's not the role of the federal government to be the watchdog over the states. No, that's a state responsibility. If a state failed to function in protecting the rights of some of its citizens, the founders wanted pressure to build up in the state, thus forcing correction within the confines of the state without interference from the federal government. And we know this to be the case because James Madison, the father of the Constitution, no less, made a comment, or actually made a proposal in the Constitutional Convention, and he tried to include a provision. I want you to listen to this. He tried to include a provision in the Bill of Rights that said, no state shall violate the equal rights of conscience or the freedom of the press or trial by jury in criminal cases. Now, this was designed to authorize the federal government to intervene if a state failed to perform its duty. That is to say, no state is going to violate any of these rights. Well, who's going to be the watchdog? Who's going to be the overseer? Who's going to ensure that that occurs or does not occur? That implied the federal government is going to be the watchdog. It didn't state it specifically, but it implied it. And because of that, do you know the founders turned it down flat? Absolutely not. The federal government is to stay out of the business of the states. Now, that's the idea. That's what the Bill of Rights is all about. And let's go back to the gun laws that they're now proposing. What is the constitutional answer? The constitutional answer is if a state wants to pass particular laws pertaining to, or municipalities pertaining to gun violence, let them do so. And it's easier for a person to change his state legislator or his local municipality or his county government than it is to fight Washington, D.C., isn't it? But no, people like John Cornyn are completely, and Lindsey Graham are so unschooled in the unique design of the Constitution, and particularly these two unique features of the Bill of Rights. They're unfamiliar with natural rights before God, that they absolutely have caved because of the pressure in Washington, D.C., not the constituents in the state of Texas, mind you. And by the way, Matthew McConaughey, what is up with him? Going up to Washington, D.C., I saw a picture of him. You know, he had, let's see, 4 bodyguards carrying pistols as he walked around. Yeah, see, that's the elitist. That's the elite position. What's good for me is not good for thee. You have to give up your guns, but boy, I'm not going to give up mine. Now, I'm not going to carry by my person, but when I go out in public, I'm going to have a bodyguard there, and he's going to be armed. Matthew McConaughey is not worthy of the Constitution at all. He's very, very liberal, and he has been pushing, getting into the White House. Joe Biden wanted some kind of spokesman, I guess, getting into the White House press secretary room and pushing gun legislation. Matthew McConaughey, a good thing would be, first of all, go be schooled in the Constitution. And then maybe we'll talk. I will be back in a moment.